The moment you stop being available, people don't chase you. They replace you immediately, like you were never that important. You take longer to reply, just once, and suddenly the conversation moves on without you. Your name doesn't come up. No one waits. You go from the one they rely on to the one they don't even think to include. And that's when it hits you. The moment you stop being available is the moment you start seeing who was actually using you. But even that is still wrong, because they didn't suddenly start using you. You removed what made you useful, and the connection collapsed with it. If you don't understand this part, you'll keep losing your position, without ever knowing why. Subscribe, because this is where almost everyone misreads what's really happening. And what makes this worse is that it doesn't feel like something you created. It feels like something that just happened to you. It didn't. It was built, quietly, every time you made it easy to reach you, without making it necessary to keep you. Think about this. There are people who only message you when they're already bored. Not busy, not occupied. Bored. You're not the plan. You're what fills the gap between plans. And the reason that feels normal is because you never made it feel costly. There's a line from Will Durant people repeat, but they don't really understand it. We are what we repeatedly do. Everyone hears that and thinks about themselves, but they forget other people are doing the same thing to you. You repeated availability. They repeated taking it for granted. Not because they decided to, because they didn't have to decide anything. When something is always accessible, it stops being evaluated. So you didn't make them care less. You removed the need to care at all. And this is where most people get it wrong. They think if they pull back, something will break. The other person will notice, react, reach. Sometimes, nothing happens. You stop initiating, and instead of wondering where you went, they just keep going. Because silence doesn't create value. It exposes where you were never required. And this is where most people get it wrong. They see that, and assume it means the other person didn't value them, that they were being used. But that's not what it means. No, that's too simple. Because if they were using you, they would need you. They didn't. That's the part you missed. You weren't being used. You were being fit in, wherever there was space. And the moment you removed yourself, nothing collapsed. Nothing had to. Look closely at this. There are people who don't reach out to you, but the moment you appear, they engage. Not because they were thinking about you, because you showed up. You didn't interrupt their life. You joined whatever was already happening. That's not connection. That's convenience. So when you step back and nothing happens, you call it, they never cared. But that's not what the silence is saying. It's saying, there was no structure there to begin with. You weren't part of something stable. You were an addition. Removable. Without consequence. And here's where it gets uncomfortable, because this doesn't just change how you see them. It changes what you were doing. You didn't just show up because you wanted to. You showed up because it worked. It gave you something. A reply, a reaction, a place. There are times you knew you should pull back, but you checked your phone instead. Not to see if they texted, but to make sure you hadn't disappeared. That's not generosity. That's dependency. You thought you were kind, but you were negotiating for relevance. And this is exactly what Epictetus was pointing at when he said, when someone is properly grounded in life, they shouldn't have to look outside themselves for approval. You did, which means they didn't have to. And the moment someone else controls whether you feel relevant, they control how long you stay. Be honest. Have you ever stayed available long after you lost interest, just so you wouldn't lose your place? Say aware if you've seen it, or say nothing, and notice why. Because once you see that, you start noticing something else. Why some people keep their place without trying, and others lose it, even when they give more. That difference isn't random. It's calculated. Not consciously, but it's calculated. Because every interaction has a cost, and people feel that cost, even when they can't explain it. That's what you missed. You thought you were building connection, but you were lowering the cost of access. And when the cost is low enough, people stop deciding. They just take, because human behavior naturally moves toward what gives more for less. So if you're always there, always responding, always available, there's nothing to evaluate, nothing to earn, nothing to lose. And when nothing can be lost, nothing has to be protected. You ever notice this? You can go hours without checking your phone. But the moment you finally look, you open their chat first. Not because they messaged, but because you're used to being the one who keeps it going. That's not connection. That's a loop. And the more you maintain that loop, the less they have to. Until eventually, they don't think about it at all. Because the system already works for them. And the moment you disrupt that, everything starts to feel wrong. Not just for them, for you. You hesitate, and it feels like you've done something off. You don't reply, and your mind keeps pulling you back. Not because they asked, but because the pattern expects it. That feeling isn't intuition. It's withdrawal. You didn't just build a dynamic with them. You built a rhythm your own behavior got used to. If this just made something click, hit like, and send this to someone who still thinks being available is the same as being valued. Because once you break that rhythm, you find out something most people never notice. Who was adjusting to you? And who was just benefiting from you? There's someone who used to reply fast. Now they take longer. Not enough to question it. Just enough to feel off. And then there's someone else who suddenly becomes more precise, shorter messages, more intentional. Like they're paying attention now. Same distance, different reaction. That's where it splits. Not into real and fake, into something quieter. Some people adjust to your absence. Others depend on your presence. And you only see it when the pattern breaks. Here's the part most people miss. There are people who never start conversations with you. But somehow, you've had months of conversations with them. You scroll up, and every thread starts the same way. You. That's not coincidence. That's design. Not theirs. Yours. And when you stop, you don't lose them. You remove the system that kept them there. This is where it gets uncomfortable. Because now, nothing is happening. No reaction, no correction. Just silence. And your mind starts negotiating. Maybe I should check in. Maybe they think I'm off. Not because they reached out, because you're used to reaching. That's the part people call intuition. It's not. It's habit, looking for somewhere to go. And this is where Stoicism actually matters. Not in theory, but here. Right here. You control. Whether you respond, whether you initiate, whether you stay available, you don't control. Whether they notice, whether they care, whether they come back. And most people can't sit in that gap. Because they don't just want control over themselves. They want confirmation. That they mattered. That it was real. That it wasn't one-sided. But the moment you need that, you're back in the same position. Waiting. Reacting. Adjusting to them. Instead of seeing them clearly. And once you stop trying to control what they do, something sharper shows up. And this is where it turns on you. Because you thought this would show you who was using you. It doesn't. Not at first. It shows you something worse. How easy it was. Not for them. For you. You don't just notice who disappears. You notice how many times you made sure they didn't have to stay. You replied first. You followed up. You filled the silence before it could mean anything. Not once. Repeatedly. That's the part that stings. Because clarity doesn't expose others first. It exposes your patterns. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. You start remembering things differently. Not what they did. What you kept fixing. What you kept maintaining. What you made frictionless. And that's when this line from Epictetus hits properly. He who craves or shuns what is not in his control becomes a slave. Most people hear that and think about emotions, but that's not where it shows up. It shows up here, when you need them to respond, when you need them to notice, when you need proof that it meant something. That's the dependency. Not on them. On the outcome. And the moment you need that, you go back to chasing. Just quieter. So this isn't about becoming distant. That's the mistake people make. They think the answer is to pull back harder, be colder, be unavailable. That's not control. That's reaction. The shift is simpler and harder. You stop being always there. Always ready. Always easy to reach. And you become something people can't predict. Not unavailable. Selective. Not distant. Intentional. Not reactive. Self-directed. Because now, your presence isn't automatic. It's chosen. And that changes everything. But here's the part most people don't expect. When you make that shift, you don't just see people differently. You feel different to yourself. Less rushed, less pulled, less needed. And that's when it clicks. The moment you stop being available, you don't discover who was using you. You discover what version of you made it possible. Now here's the part most people miss. Seeing this once isn't enough. Because if you don't know what replaces that version of you, you fall back into it. Automatically. So the next video breaks that down. What actually changes in your behavior, without you forcing it. It's on your screen right now. Watch that, then go through the full sequence. Because this isn't one realization. It's a pattern you either break or repeat. And if you haven't already, subscribe.